welcome. Today we are joined by the caring Wendy Capewell. Wendy is a dedicated counselor and psychotherapist with a specialization in childhood trauma and relationships. With over 19 years of professional experience, Wendy is dedicated to helping individuals rebuild their self-esteem and reclaim control over their lives, as well as assisting couples in overcoming relationship challenges. Now, please welcome Wendy.
Thank you, Severine. It's so nice to be on here. I'm really thrilled that you've invited me. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. Wendy, what inspired you to specialize in counseling for childhood trauma and relationships?
It's an interesting one. First of all, I started training shortly after I'd been in an abusive relationship. I wanted self-awareness. I mean, when you start on that journey of training to be a therapist, it's a lot about self-awareness. It's learning about ourselves. I wanted to know, some of my exploration was why I kept repeating similar behaviors. One of the things that created problems in that relationship was that my partner had been through a lot of childhood abuse. He'd been sexually, physically, emotionally, verbally abused, and it had affected his life so badly. It had also affected our relationships. The only tool I had at that time during the relationship was to listen, and learning how awful it was for him and how badly that affected him and our relationship led me really to kind of explore more. I wanted to know more about why childhood abuse so badly affected relationships and adults. Going into the relationship side of it that grew slowly after I qualified, because I had more people asking me about relationships. Did I work with couples? I felt I was pretty well qualified personally, because I'd screwed up enough relationships of my own and I'd been married twice and divorced twice. And I thought, I'd learned something in my training, but I continued learning. And I thought, you know what? I'll do some more training. I'll learn how I can help people with their relationships, the pitfalls that happen. Why do we fall into those patterns? But what's interesting, Severine, is that we bring our own trauma, our own background, our own baggage, whatever it is, into relationships. And we've individually got our own stuff that we bring into that relationship, and it will trigger us. And so you headbutt, you bring all those stuff in, it will trigger you. That's what happened to me when I was younger. That's what happened. This is the way it should be done, whatever those patterns are. So that is what I find is interesting, helping couples become more aware of what they bring into relationships and how they can manage it.
How do past experiences from childhood trauma influence adult relationships?
Childhood trauma is so complicated. It can be small, it can be big. And I think people don't understand that with trauma, people talk about trauma and then they're one event or one situation, and they isolate them instead of actually seeing that it builds. So it's almost, I describe it like if you had, say you had a broken leg and you had to have surgery and they cut your leg open, you would have a scar. And maybe they had to operate again. That scar, you'd have a scar on top of a scar. And that's what happens with emotional trauma. So it builds one on top of another. You've got scar tissue, emotional scar tissue on top of emotional scar tissue. This is what happens. It then creates not only our own relationship with ourselves, but it affects the relationship with our partners. So it could be that your trust was broken. Maybe you felt insignificant. Maybe you felt that you didn't matter. Maybe you felt you weren't good enough. I mean, there's a lot more in it when we talk about attachment theory, which is how we attach to our caregivers as babies. And if we didn't get a secure attachment, which many of us didn't, that will affect us how we behave in relationships. We could have like insecure attachment, which could be anxious attachment, which means we're scared of the person leaving us. We can have avoidant attachment, which means that we don't fully engage because of the simple reason that they might leave us, and therefore our parent wasn't consistent, and therefore we don't fully commit to that relationship. There's a lot more to it, Severine, but in a very In very simple terms, that's how I would kind of answer your question.
And what kind of strategies can we implement to address these challenges?
For ourselves, it's about self-awareness. For some, I mean, so many people are unaware of how their behaviors are. They continue with the same negative patterns, one after another, whether it is our relationship with friends, whether it is bonding with other people, whether it is lack of confidence, whatever those things that we struggle with. I always like to look at the root of the problem, because where did that come from? Where did that belief of that you're not good enough come from? And then we can start changing patterns. Once we've got awareness, we can start making changes. Although the changes take a lot longer, they're harder to change. It's harder to change, but we can change. And with relationships, I think we can't go into a relationship expecting the other person to heal us. I think it's about being supportive of each other to heal, but we can't expect our partner to do the healing, not for us. We've got to do it within a safe and secure relationship. But of course, each of you have got your baggage, so it could be tricky at times.
And in your work with individuals rebuilding self-esteem, what are some common hurdles they face?
Self-esteem, well, I think I just touched on that feeling of not being good enough. And sometimes it's overt comments, sometimes it's covert behaviours that we made us believe that we weren't good enough, we're not up to it. As children, we tend to believe that it must be our fault, not that things that our parents have said or done, or that belief, then we believe it's our fault. We're trying to please our parents, we're trying to please our caregivers, so we always searching for that. And if we don't get that affirmation, then we feel rubbish. So maybe it was bullying. Maybe you were told, oh, you can never go to ballet classes because you'll never make a ballet dancer because you're too fat. That's flattening for a child. You didn't do well at school. You didn't get good enough grades. You've got to try harder. I mean, more so now, I think I see it constantly. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I just don't measure up. And if you keep hearing that, I mean, school reports are much better than they used to be. I think schools have got more into encouraging children, although I would say sometimes it's a bit over the top. But I remember my school reports always said, could try harder, but never explained why. So I always felt, well, I'm not good enough. That self-esteem is deeply embedded quite often.
How do you guide them through the process of rebuilding their self-esteem?
As I said, it's that awareness. Let's dig down, find the root of the problem. It could have started in childhood. It could have started later on. It could have been at school. It could be along the way. But then it is looking at the small wins, the things that have gone well, the things that they don't have to be big, but even those tiny things of speaking up, those tiny things of saying, I have got a voice, even being able to say no. I've worked with clients where, okay, when you go into shop and you buy something and they say, can we send you your receipt by email? And people kind of feel they can't say no. But if that's one of the things you struggle with, try with that. No, thank you. Because saying no can be huge for some people. Others, it might be something bigger. But working on those positives is really important. We are programmed to think more or notice more about the negatives because that is part of our survival system.
It's every little step.
Every little step we build on a step by step. Yeah.
And then you would get there.
Yeah.
For couples facing communication barriers and differing relationship blueprints, what strategy would you recommend?
Communication starts with listening. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I often find that people don't listen. Yeah, it's very common. I don't know. We see it every day. Someone starts talking, or if you start talking, and then you find someone interrupts before you finish your sentence because they want to tell oh yeah, I remember that, or oh, that's what you think. They finish the sentence for us, and that is really disrespectful, but it also shuts the other person down. They really, okay, what's the point of me saying anything? So it is really that listening. Listening is really important, because when we don't listen, and we don't listen actively, and that means every part of us, we don't use our voices to speak. We use our eyes, we use our body language, we use every part of us when we talk. And I think that gets missed a lot. People are talking to each other where they're doing something else. They're washing up, they're watching TV. They're not really paying full attention to each other.
How do you approach helping couples identify and unravel the root cause of their relationship problems?
I'm going to use Gabor Mate's view, which is compassionate inquiry. So it's being curious, asking questions, and not just accepting the first answer they give. Tell me more about it. Tell me more. Help me understand that. What is that about? And I think that's how I will start. It is about, and then encouraging the other person to listen, and asking them, have you heard this before? Usually, yeah, I've heard it all before. Do you hear anything different? Is there anything different there? Just getting them to be more curious. Yeah.
In your opinion, how does self-belief contribute to an individual's ability to communicate effectively and maintain a healthy relationship?
Well, if we don't have the confidence to speak, if we feel that we're not good enough, if we feel we don't have the right to have an opinion, that is a huge barrier. Sometimes when I work with couples, I will see them together because it's about the relationship that's broken down. It's not about broken people. I always veer away from the blame kind of culture. You're two amazing people. You're perfectly okay. It's just you're not relating very well. The relationship isn't working. But sometimes I will see the couples individually because they feel safer to be able to talk to me on their own, able to share things with me that they haven't felt comfortable enough to say to their partner. What is interesting is that after those sessions, it often gives them the confidence to say it to their partner in the session. I think a therapist's kind of role is very much of a mediator. I've also been described as a sat nav, which I think I love because I don't tell people what to do, but I guide them. I hope I don't take them down too many dead ends. That's that's the art of it, really. But yes, it is enabling them to feel strong enough to voice those things together.
Wendy, we touched on active listening before. Could you elaborate on the significance of active listening in relationships, and how do you encourage individuals and couples to improve that skill?
I think sometimes it is about exercises. I always say, put your phones down. You know, we get so distracted by our phones. Oh, we get distracted. Life is so busy, it's frenetic. You're working, you're probably holding down full-time jobs, you're trying to manage a household, you've probably got children you've got to take care of. Maybe you've got extended families that are taking up time as well. I just think it's making time, carving out time, and it doesn't have to be a long time. I'm not putting it off. The other thing I see so often is, oh yeah, well, we've got a planned a holiday in 6 months' time. Well, you're going to put your relationship on hold for 6 months? You can't do that. It's about connecting every day. There are three kind of principles that I think as foundations for a relationship. There are many others, but caring, commitment, and communication. Communication is really focusing on each other, not being distracted by other things, really. And it is about caring. I care enough that I'm going to listen to you. I care enough that I'm going to focus on our relationship. Even if we sit down for 10 minutes and have a cuppa after dinner, even if we wash up together, even if we just go for a walk the dog together, it's that non-distraction from other things. I think that's where I encourage couples and individuals, listen. And you know what, Severine, I'm going to bring into this about the arguments, because so often you hear people, they bicker about menial things. Okay, well, it's about you didn't put the bin out, and then you didn't wash up, you didn't whatever. And I go, okay, let's really see not what you're arguing about, but what are you arguing for? Are you arguing for attention? Are you arguing for commitment? Are you arguing because is underneath it is a fear of abandonment? I mean, there are so many other things, and that's what I try and get to. What is really underneath all of this? And that's where I think that connection and that compassionate inquiry really plays into all of it.
I completely agree with you on the arguing about or arguing for. We're always complaining about something, but it's not the thing in itself. It's just either the accumulation of things or something else, and then that's a cherry, and then we're going to argue about anything. So, with the evolving dynamics of relationships and mental health, what trends or changes do you foresee in the future?
There are several things that I'm noticing more recently. I think we've got more awareness of mental health, and that is a really good thing. If one thing came out of that awful pandemic, it was that we're more able to talk about mental health. It's not such a taboo subject. But I also feel that the other things that I notice more in changes in relationships is, and in individuals, is entitlement. People have this air of entitlement and they want it now. Well, I think that's the introduction of the internet. Well, you can get something from Amazon tomorrow. That's instantaneous. I can watch a program instantly. I can do anything instantly. But then that leads to the anxieties of, well, you want me to be there for you now. You want this from me now. And I think that can create anxiety. It can create, if people are struggling, well, you know, we all have mental health. It's just sometimes our mental health isn't as good as other times. But I think it plays into relationships because people can struggle. We can all struggle at times. But I think there is just this sense of, we've got mobile phones where people aren't connecting with each other. They go to bed and instead of having a cuddle, they'll sit and watch a film. There's that sense of, you don't care about me. I'm feeling abandoned. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling angry. And I think that leads to all of that stuff where you're talking about mental health. But then there are other people that are struggling with deeper issues that can play a big part in relationships. That's a whole different ball game. If someone has, someone struggles with depression, or they have a real bout of depression, or they have, if that's a reoccurring theme, that can put quite pressure on the relationship or on the other person. There is something around that, because I see words bandied around all over. Everybody's a narcissist. Everybody is, they've got all these conditions. I mean, clients bring to me these conditions and they just use acronyms, and I stare at them blankly going, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't work with diagnosis. I deal with what's going on for you. And then you're right. I think there is that tendency. I mean, because gaslighting is the other one that everybody bandies around. Check it out before you start that. If it's just bandied around too much, and then people put that on the other person, or they've got it, or whatever. And there is that temptation to immediately take a pill. I want something, cure me now, rather than, what can I do? What can I do? How can I work on myself? Where did this come from? Why do I feel this way? What can I do? Taking ownership of it, as you said. And I think that's very powerful. When people suffer with depression, there are lots of things they can do. I know some people can't even get out of bed. I understand that. But even if they could only get out, it's baby steps. If you've got depression and you can't get out of bed, what can you do? And building on it. Yes, help. Self-awareness. Where's it come from? How can you activate the happy hormones, as I'm going to call them? because the others get in the way, the stress hormones. What there is a lot out there that you can do. I hear what you're saying. There are some people that really do have awful conditions, but that I also hear your point of view too. Yeah. I think only a professional could diagnose someone with mental health issues as well as physical issues. I say I'm not qualified to do that, but let's work on you. Let's find out what's going on for you, what you need, what is happening for you. And the other thing I would like to bring into this is when you mentioned IBS, because our body and our physical body and our emotional body are connected, and people don't get it. Why have you got IBS as an underlying problem? The chances are you are stressed and therefore you're anxious, and that is causing your digestive system to misbehave. So, I really find that so fascinating. I've worked with people for a long time, and I kept thinking, very early on when I was very inexperienced, that's interesting how they developed that condition at that time in their life. A classic was a client who, she was in her 40s, had type 1 diabetes. And I asked her when it started, and she said she was 11 years old. I asked what was going on in her life around her, and her parents had got divorced. Her mother had a nervous breakdown. There was a lot of changes in her life. Wow, there's something there. And people talk about mental health as though it's separate from our physical health. No, it's not. We've got a spinal cord there that connects it for a start. You can't detach the two. But yeah, I think there's a lot we can physically help ourselves with emotional and mental health. Well, make sure that you find somebody who is qualified. Counseling's not regulated in this country. I belong to a professional body, and I'm accredited by the BACP, British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapists, and I'm accredited by them. And that gives me some standing because I have to adhere to their framework. So I think someone who has a governing body that they are a membership of, and there are many, BACP is only one. I think then have a conversation with somebody. Talk to them, find out more about them, investigate them, see what they specialize in. There are a lot of generalists, but if you're looking for something specific, I do specialize in trauma and relationship. There are counselors who specialize in working in different areas. Have a conversation with them. I offer a 20-minute call with prospective clients if they can ask me any questions at all. And I have a website where I share freely about me, about my professional side and my personal side. Investigate, check them out. Yeah, you can find me. You can Google me, Wendy Capewell. But my website is wendicapewell.co.uk. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I also have produced quite a number of podcasts in the past, so you can find me. My podcast is Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat, and it covers numerous situations. I think I've done 157 over the past 7 years. But yeah, there are lots of ways you can find out about me. So I would say your first stop is your GP. Go to your GP. And then if you're not getting the answers and you're still concerned, then ask to be referred. People can get diagnosed with ADHD. There are specialists who deal with that. There's specialists in all kinds of areas. And I think if you want a diagnosis, then go to your GP, then ask, where else can I go? They are general practitioners, so that meaning they have general knowledge, but they're not specialists. So if you have a concern, you are worried about something, go to your GP. That's your first protocol, and then ask to be referred. Can I speak to somebody else? There are all kinds of tests for people on the spectrum as well. So if that's what you need, then check that out.